Oh,
Friday.
all yours, Chris.
Hey everyone. So we have today two very special speakers. William, are you prepared to present? If not, then we'd like to start off with you.
Yeah, that sounds great. I am excited to be on with everyone. My name is William. I am part of the product marketing team. And in particular, my areas of our expertise are cloud native application development and GitOps. And so today we are talking about GitOps, which is a bit of a newer term, one that you may have not heard before, but we're kicking off a spectacular GitOps campaign led by Eirini, which you'll hear about in just a little bit. So I would love to just give you a little bit of the background of, hey, what is GitOps and kind of who are the personas involved, and maybe some language, so a basic understanding of what it is and some other resources you can go to dig in a little bit deeper, and then we'll talk about the campaign. So I will share a screen here, and the main resource I want to point out, which should be in this issue, and it's right here, what is GitOps in the use case overview? And this is our GitOps go-to-market use case page. So as kind of a refresher, we have about 7 or 8 use cases. These are like ways, you know, when folks are looking to buy GitLab to do something, it's some kind of use case like DevSecOps or CI or version control and collaboration. And GitOps is something that one of our buyers that's buying GitLab would use GitLab to do. So in a nutshell, you can think of GitOps as taking DevOps best practices used for application development, things like version control, collaboration, compliance, and CI/CD, and applying those to infrastructure automation. So if you think of, you probably have seen this slide a lot. We have this in a bunch of different decks, and this is the GitLab flow. So when you're doing application development, you would write your application code, you create an issue, you create a merge request for your code, you'd commit your changes as you're building that application, you'd run CI on it, et cetera, to approve those changes. Then you merge those changes back in, and now you have that application that's running in production. Well, in order to run an application, in addition to the application code, it needs to run on some kind of infrastructure. So it needs to be running on a computer somewhere or a server, or it needs to be running on virtual machines in the cloud, or it needs to be running on Kubernetes. It needs some kind of infrastructure that application is running on top of. And so the application code is the concern of the software developers in the development team, and the infrastructure is the concern of the operations team. And this is kind of where you've heard of dev and you've heard of ops. We talk a lot about the dev part. This is the ops part. The ops people are the ones that manage the infrastructure. Now, in the old days of managing infrastructure, this was a manual process. You might have to spin up a physical server and literally like rack a new server on the rack in order to provide infrastructure for the applications team. But in these days, with cloud infrastructure, everything is automated. With Kubernetes, we're doing dynamic infrastructure that scales up and down. If there's a lot of load on the application, it just scales up and scales down. And managing that really, really complex infrastructure requires some more sophisticated practices in your operations team. This is where GitOps comes in. GitOps is taking these kind of best practices, doing things like keeping all your configuration as code. We call that infrastructure as code. Using version control and code review and merge requests for your changes. That's kind of what GitOps is. So, so this is a good page. It has a lot of good info. I'd recommend kind of reading it in more detail. But at a high level, if you're doing infrastructure as code, or you're defining your infrastructure not manually, you're not clicking in a GUI, but you're actually defining that as code. And there are certain tools for this, things like Ansible and Terraform and other infrastructure as code tools. If you're storing that in a Git repository, and then you're using merge requests as your change agent. So rather than making manual changes to your infrastructure, or rather than logging into a particular server and making those changes, instead, you are having CI/CD automatically apply those changes when new configuration gets merged into the production branch. So it's just like doing application development, but for your operations. Hopefully that's a clear enough of an understanding, and if I can explain that better, or if there's questions, we can dig into it. There's a few things to key in here. One is, just like cloud native, the people you talk to on the phone are probably not familiar with the term GitOps. GitOps is a great term for us to use in marketing. It's a new term. It's a term that we want to gain ownership of, but it's not one that's very ubiquitous in the industry. So if you've heard me talk about cloud native, I usually will tell you your customers and the people, your prospects that you're talking to, they're probably not familiar with the term cloud native. They might be, but they're probably not. They're probably more familiar with something like Kubernetes. So if you hear words like Kubernetes and microservices, that's the language you should use on the phone to talk about cloud native. Similarly, they may or may not know about GitOps, probably even less so. GitOps is an even newer term. But what they are going to talk about is infrastructure as code. So if you have prospects and they are in the operations team, they're doing platform operations, they're like director of IT. We'll look at the personas here in just a sec. But the term that you would talk to them about is, oh, infrastructure as code. Are you using infrastructure as code? If you are, we have a lot of capabilities that can really help you out. In the same way that GitLab is amazing for development teams, GitLab is really amazing for operations teams as well. And you can do infrastructure as code in GitLab. Infrastructure as code is really, it's a subcomponent of GitOps. If you're doing GitOps, you're doing a bunch of other things in addition to infrastructure as code, but that's probably your term that your prospects are going to be most familiar with. Wanted to give you some language to share there. I won't go deep into all this stuff. I realize it's just a short overview, but I do want to talk about some of the personas here. And this is a slide here, and this deck is also should be linked in the materials. But this is a very modern way to structure an operations team. So in the very, very old way of you have dev and you have ops and they're very, very siloed and you rack and stack servers, that's a very old way. And there's a lot of different ways to structure operations teams, but this is a very modern way. What we tend to see is there's some kind of what we call the platform operations team. And they manage a horizontal platform, usually built on top of Kubernetes. That's why the Kubernetes logo is there. And it's powered by some kind of infrastructure. You might have bare metal servers on premises, like Dell does that. You might be using a cloud platform like Azure or Google or AWS. But the infrastructure is abstracted away from your development teams. Your development teams, they don't have to worry about how many servers they're provisioning to run their application. All they do is they package their application or their microservice in a container, and that container gets deployed onto the Kubernetes platform. So that platform is managed by an operations team, powered by some infrastructure, and these may be the same team or they may be different teams. Sometimes you just have an ops team and they manage the platform and the infrastructure. Sometimes you might be talking to somebody who's, let's say, a VP of infrastructure, and they just manage this component. Sometimes they'll manage both components, right? So these are the kind of the personas here. And then even within the dev teams care about GitOps because they care about having infrastructure provision for them. So you have developers and what we call the embedded site reliability engineer. They're working together in a cross-functional DevOps microservice team. And they, this is where they're writing their application code. And this is the infrastructure that their code gets deployed on, the teams that manage it. So some of the user personas here are going to be like a site reliability engineer, a DevOps engineer, platform operator or platform operations engineer. This is really the big one for GitOps. If they're doing platform operations or if they want to do platform operations, that's what GitOps is all about. Infrastructure as code managed as a platform. Or even somebody might have an operations title like a system administrator if they're a larger organization and they haven't really embraced engineering for their operations yet. Of course, the buyer personas here, folks like VP of IT or CIO, right? Infrastructure, anybody who has infrastructure in their title. Or again, the newer term is platform engineering. So those are some of the personas, some of what is GitOps. And I think I'm just going to pause it there. This main page is the one that has like the most info for you. I'll share one last thing, and then I really want to turn over to Eirini, which is a lot of these go-to-market motions that we're defining, things like DevSecOps or CI or version control and collaboration. What we've done is we've developed the entire go-to-market strategy first, and then we start executing against it. With GitOps, we're doing a little bit differently. Actually, we're still in the process of defining the go-to-market strategy, but we're already kicked off a campaign. So in some ways, we're kind of doing this in parallel. In some places, we're playing catch up. In some cases, what you'll see is this page will be rapidly changing and more content will be here. So you'll see, for example, things like our differentiators aren't even defined yet. So we've already kicked off the campaign, but we don't have all of these things documented. So, which is okay, because we said GitOps is so great. We want to go ahead and kick off a campaign right away. We don't want to block and wait on having all the pieces put together. So in true GitLab fashion, we're doing this in an iterative MVC, minimum viable change style, where we're just starting out, and you're going to see more iterations to come. I'll hand it over to Eirini, and then I think we'll do some questions at the end. Does that sound good?
Thanks, William. Hi, everyone. My name is Eirini. I am the marketing programs team. I am joining you from Athens in Greece today. And as William said, GitOps is a very new use case. We went straight on with the campaign. We didn't have much content. We are creating this on the go. But the campaign is live, so I will walk you through the elements. Just going to share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen? Perfect. So this is your single source of truth when it comes to resources for the GitOps use case campaign. There is a link to the parent epic where all the work is being done, but most useful links for you are the ones that are listed here. So first of all, I wanted to share something a bit fancier to show you like the campaign journey. So, and if you click here where it says campaign journey, you can see this bigger. Maybe this is not as big. So this is how people will land on our campaign landing page. So we have some digital ads live and social ads live, and they look like this, and they land on this landing page, which is this one. So our main offer for this campaign is a live panel discussion that's happening on July 15th. And we're talking about the future of infrastructure automation and GitOps, how to do GitOps, what successful GitOps looks like. And it's more of an awareness piece. And we have some great panelists from partners and guests here, as you can see, that will be speaking on the topic. That's happening on July 15th, and that's our main campaign landing page. So our ads are driving mainly to this landing page. So everyone who registers will get +15 lead scoring. And then if they attend live, they'll get +15 as well on top of that. If they watch on demand after July 15, they will get +15 as well. And then we have more assets. I'll go through them in a bit. But everyone who is consuming GitOps content, they will be entering a nurture stream. So we have Path Factory, and we have built a Path Factory experience, which is a place where people can consume content that is relevant to a topic. So we have built this Path Factory track that is around all the GitOps assets. So people can go in and consume content one after the other. It's also linked here. So Path Factory experience. And it looks like this. And it starts with like a few blog posts. And then it goes to like some webcasts that are on the topic. And the user can pick which one to consume. So this is also how the nurture stream works. So people that enter the nurture stream, they will get a number of 7 emails moving from awareness to consideration and to purchase. So the emails are listed here if you want to have a look, and also they are on the nurture issue, which is also linked through this epic. And its email is linking to a Path Factory asset. So like it starts with some blogs, and then some of them are not have not happened yet, so they will be added later. And it drives to some gated assets, which we only have some webcasts, and mainly with partners at the moment. And we will have an ebook end of July, which will be added here as well, and will be another gated asset. And they end up on the free trial page. So when they consume these assets on Path Factory more than 30 seconds, more than 20 seconds, sorry, they get another 30 points on lead scoring. And that's for the gated assets, not for the blogs. And then if they click to start a free trial, they'll get another 100 points, sorry. So that's the overview. And then, so how will you see these leads coming through? So you will see an interesting moment that will say on your Salesforce view, that will say that they watched live, or after July 15, they attended on demand the panel discussion, GitOps, the future of infrastructure automation, in a Path Factory experience. So that's what you will see. And if they reach enough points through this whole journey, they will reach the 90-point threshold and become MQLs. Oh, sorry, this is the interesting moment. GitOps use case campaign, register or attended on demand the panel discussion, GitOps, the future of infrastructure automation. We are creating, there is a team that is creating now some outreach sequences, both outbound and inbound. They're not ready yet, they're work in progress, but they will be ready for July 15th. So before the panel discussion happens and before those leads get added, you will have the outreach sequences to follow up and also to drive them to the on-demand page. Let's see what links I missed here. Oh, okay. So this is a link to the campaign brief. So this is talking about what the objectives are for the campaign, and you can read through that. I just wanted to show you that there is a list here about all the marketing assets that are relevant to this use case campaign. So we have a topic page, which is more like awareness about what is GitOps, and then it's listing resources. And then we have some blogs. You can see what's live, what not yet. We have a lot of partner webcasts, as I mentioned, on this topic that are also gated content. And then we have some more webcasts on the consideration stage, and we're building out a solutions page as well. And we will have an ebook end of July, which is also going to be gated content on this topic. So we talked about the persona. William talked about the use case, go-to-market, topic page we saw, Path Factory experience we saw, and there is, so this is ongoing. As I said, there is another webcast that's happening on the topic as well on July 8th. And this will be another resource as well. I think covered everything. See the agenda. Yeah, I think we're good to open for questions.
All right, I have questions. With Ansible and Terraform, obviously they're commonly used in the infrastructure IAC part side of things. My question is, what would be the advantage of combining that with GitLab comparing to our competitors? And will GitLab eventually replace those tools? Are there any interests on the roadmap to also cover that? So there's no need to integrate with Ansible and Terraform in the future.
That is a really good question. I will show this slide here as well, which I linked in the comments. This is not quite a customer deck. That asset will be forthcoming. This is more of like a speaker deck if we were to do a talk of what is GitOps. So if you look at some of the technologies involved, you need things like a Git management tool, CI, CD, container registry. GitLab does all of these things. But you also are going to want things like a configuration manager or infrastructure provisioning. And the answer here is somewhat technical and somewhat complex. So I will say this, if you are containerizing your workloads, that means you're not dealing with virtual machines at all, then in many ways, your Docker file becomes the description of the infrastructure. And so if you're using a Docker file to describe everything, you don't necessarily need a configuration manager in some instances. But without getting too technical about it, there are still a lot of reasons, even if you're using Kubernetes, that you do want some kind of configuration manager to configure servers. And you do want some type of infrastructure provisioning, which is to say, okay, actually go and get me these virtual machines from this cloud service, which is what something like Terraform or Pulumi or CloudFormation do. So GitLab does not have on their roadmap any type of capabilities like traditional configuration management tools like Ansible or Chef or Puppet. We have no plans to replace those in terms of a traditional virtual machine workflow. And we have no plans to replace provisioning tools like Terraform or Pulumi. What we do have is tight integrations with those tools. So one of the reasons why GitLab would be better than, say, using a Bitbucket or GitHub for your infrastructure as code is that we have tight integrations into Terraform. For example, don't want to get too technical, but one example of a feature is Terraform state. The way Terraform works is it's called eventual consistency. You define the state of what you want your infrastructure to be, and then your automation tools, so for example, let's say GitLab CI/CD, work to configure your infrastructure, provision your infrastructure so that it matches that state. And that state is stored in a Terraform state file. And that's something that when you're using Terraform on any platform with any technology, that state file needs to be stored somewhere. Well, GitLab will store that file for you. This is an example of our tight integration with Terraform. And it even shows up in the merge request. So when you see a merge request that you're working with Terraform, you have the Terraform integration enabled, you can actually get to that state file. It's stored on GitLab, and it's stored within GitLab, and GitLab understands what it is. So the summary would be GitLab has tight integrations with tools like Terraform that make it better than other tools. That's one summary. We don't have any plans to build our own infrastructure provisioning or our own configuration management. No roadmap for that. So we will continue to integrate with tools like Ansible and Terraform. Like, for example, we have no desire to build our own Kubernetes. We'll continue to integrate with Kubernetes. And then the other advantages here are the same reasons that make like our version control and collaboration better, or that make our CI better, right? In order to do GitOps, you're going to be using CI/CD. So all of the things that make our CI/CD better for application development make our CI/CD better for GitOps. All the things that make our version control and collaboration, our SCM, better for application development are also make it better for GitOps. That's a really good question. Does that kind of help you out?
Yeah, so I want to ask, kind of touch on the state file. Is that the feature that we offer that relates to geo and disaster in the ultimate tier? And the second question would be, is there any advantage of doing IAC on-prem? Like GitOps on-prem?
So you can do GitOps with self-managed GitLab, or you can do it with GitLab.com. Doesn't matter which one you do. The advantages to going on-prem versus in the cloud are all the same ones that you would have otherwise. Like things like if you want to have compliance, challenges that you want to manage your own server, that's why you would do it. In terms of your GitOps workflow, it's going to work the same whether you're using self-managed or GitLab.com. In terms of the Terraform state administration, here is a docs link. I'll put that into the chat for today, and I'll try to also comment it on the issue. It is unrelated to Geo or anything like that. So I believe that this is a feature that's available in GitLab Core. So this is a value of using GitLab generally. So in terms of GitLab Premium or GitLab Ultimate, all of the same other values of those tiers are mostly going to apply with this use case as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Not guys. Sorry, everyone. Are there any other questions? Or if not, we'll give you back 1 minute of your time.
Good catch, Chris. Look at you.
Thank you, Chris.